We typically like to just hit the ground running.
What is the best way to describe cybersecurity to someone who may not know what it is?
That's none of your business.
Welcome and thanks for joining us for this edition of All Things Cybersecurity. I'll be your host / moderator for this discussion, Sophie Goodwin. And this man gesturing to me here is Daniel Lowrie. How are you today, Daniel?
I'm doing great, Sophie. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm well. Nobody ever asks. Thank you.
Yeah, no.
Thank you for asking.
Well, because I'm excited. You know why?
Yeah? Why?
Because we got a special guest on.
We
today.
do. We have a special guest. You know him. You love him. He is the CEO of Red Siege, among other various and sundry achievements. Tim Medin is our guest.
Tim Medin. That's right. Our good friend. He's been on before. So if you watched that episode, well, you know you're in for a treat because he's awesome. He's a hacker. He knows a bunch of awesome stuff about cybersecurity. And, we twisted his arm a little bit. We said, hey, Tim, here's the thing. Gonna need you to come back on the show. So he capitulated and he is here today. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Tim, welcome to the show. And how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Nice to see you folks. Sophie, how are you doing then?
Thank you, Tim. I am well. Thank you. I'm doing much better now because I think it's going to be a fun show.
She's getting a lot of love today.
Thank you, guys. I feel so special today.
She promised yourself you weren't going to cry.
I don't have that ability. I don't have that ability unlocked. I'm looking forward to this. I think anytime that we get the two of you guys in a room, it's always fun to hear your answers to the questions that we get. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Because Tim, I'm going to fanboy out a little bit on you because you know a thing or two about a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two, as they like to say. And so I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say and the answers that you have coming out of your head today. You've been here before. You've played this game with us. So the rules are fairly simple. We have an audience. That's right. You folks out there, you're watching, you're listening. You have questions. We're going to give you answers. That's going to come from some from this head, mostly from wherever Tim's head is. That's where that's going to come from. There it is.
You're pointing up, which where my camera is. I'm like, oh, you are pointing at me, but sort of not.
That's right. We had a lot of fun with pointing in this triple shot right here earlier before we started this whole thing.
Do you want to demonstrate?
Yeah. Like I can point through Tim's head. Ah!
It's like a demonic Brady Bunch. It's great.
It's so weird, but it is fun.
The best was the two of you sweet look at each other with me in the middle. It's the best one.
Dad.
I'm dad in this scenario.
I'm looking at Tim.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the middle.
He's in the middle. You're technically looking at Tim as well.
Yeah.
But in real life, Lynch, she's staring longingly into my eyes. Anyway, enough of those pleasantries. Let's have some fun because I'm almost guarantee we've got ourselves a couple of questions coming from the audience. And again, like we said, this is pretty straightforward. You guys have got some great questions. Make sure you put those into whatever chat form that, on the platform that you are watching this on. So, but if I could, if I were be so bold as to start the show with a question I like to ask, because it's always an interesting answer. It's kind of a two-part thing, which is, Tim, part A, are you satisfied with your level of skill when it comes to cybersecurity and all the things kind of go around that? And B, because I kind of probably figure I know the answer to A, B, what are you doing to remedy that situation?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that I always got from my parents is that desire to continue to learn. I always want to try to learn like what's next. Some of it for career, but really just for me. I love that exploration, that figuring out about how things work. My undergrad was electrical engineering and engineering. So I love figuring out about how things work. And when it comes to cybersecurity, taking a look at software systems, whatever it might be, hardware, figuring out how it works. And of course, the even more fun part is then figuring out how to break all of those things. Then the part B is how. Honestly, and I get this question all the time, like people ask me, like, how should I get started in cybersecurity? So I'm going to answer sort of maybe two questions in one, or maybe the completely wrong question. But honestly, just I dig into the thing that I find interesting to me. I'm spending some more time in some of the cloud stuff now because honestly, I don't understand all of it. So just try to dig in, figure out what does this actually look like, and then ideally find some fun, interesting things along the way.
Yeah, I find that to be true for myself as well. As I'll Yeah, I feel like a lot of us that are into cybersecurity, like that is something that interests us. We all kind of have this thing in our brain where something starts to tickle our curiosity, and we get laser focused on that. Next thing you know, we are how have 2 weeks gone by, and I've had my head down in my computer, and the world has shut off, and you just kind of follow these rabbit trails wherever they lead you because they continue to be interesting. And I found that, at least for myself, a lot of the best growth I've ever had when it comes to cybersecurity or just my, IT in general has come from me following those threads, me just going, wherever this goes, I'm gonna keep going until I've either kind of got that down or it ceases to be interesting. I've kind of hit like, oh, okay, well, this has been fun, but or something else grabs my attention and I kind of move along to that. So I find it cool that you say the same exact thing. Something will tickle your fancy and you go, hey, what's that? How did you learn enough about Kerberos to come up with the idea of Kerberosting? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, so real quick, you said rabbit trail. I'm on vacation this week trying to find a place to hide out from all of the cousins. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to hang out at my sister's place, and all she's got is a rabbit. I'm like, cool, rabbits don't make any sort of sounds. This rabbit, I swear, is in a death metal band. So if you hear sound effects, it is this guy. I deeply apologize. It is my rabbit trail to hell this week.
Yeah.
But how did I get rolling into the Kerberos thing? Honestly, it was trying to figure it out. Like it started off with me just discussing with some friends, what is this thing? How does it work? And it was some of us over beers at some conference, just starting that discussion. We continued afterwards on chat and just continued to dig into that. So it kind of goes back to my earlier point, like, what's that interesting, that thing that's gnawing at you? Like, how does this thing work? And then just start digging into that piece. So it was really just reading a whole bunch, looking at other things people have posted, unfortunately reading some extremely boring RFCs along the way. But it was just digging into a piece that I was interested in and didn't know much, if anything, about at the time.
Dude, that must have been the fact that you kept, like, I've read my share of RFCs, and they are actually, they're really good for your health because they will cure even the most and hopeless of insomniacs, right? It's just, they are dry, but inside of that little thing, and of course, it's always the piece you skip over that you just kind of glance, oh, this doesn't seem important. That is the important part.
Yeah.
But if you dig into those things, you'll find, oh, I can't believe that does that. Well, hold on. If I do, then oh no. And then you kind of stumble on these things, and, we're all the better off for it because obviously, like, that technique has become a de facto standard for anybody that wants to be on the offensive side of things, is you have to know how to do that. And of course, we nod our little hats to, hey, Tim, thanks for reading RFCs and being wicked bored while wicked interested at the exact same time. So very cool. I've always kind of wondered about that story. So I guess that's the end of that one.
Well, thank you for kicking off the discussion with a lovely question, a couple questions.
Yeah.
I think this is a good way to get the ball rolling, kind of. But we do have some questions from, we've got YouTube, LinkedIn, Zoom. We've got a couple different channels going. So we'll start with this question from Eric. Eric is watching from YouTube, and he asks, any ideas on how to start a home lab for security purposes, or just go the try hack me route?
That's a good question, because we do have a lot of really great cyber ranges out there now that you just log in and you start playing the game. But do you think that should be, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on Eric's question here, Tim, so wrap this up into your answer. Do you think that there's no longer a need for having a home lab, and that the try hack me's and the hack the boxes and things of the world have kind of fixed that issue for us? Or is there still value in that, along with, should I start there and then move on to a home lab or whatever?
Yeah, and some of that depends on what you're trying to focus on. So, for example, if you want to really focus on the cloud, you're not going to set up a home lab for that. You're literally going to sign up for a free Azure, AWS, Google, whatever, fill in the blank, build something there, play with that for free. Are really interesting. They're phenomenal for learning. There's a goal associated with it. There's a challenge. It can be solved. There's help that you can get for that, which all of those things are phenomenal pieces. The piece that I see it missing with some of those free ranges are not really free, but the available ranges are they don't have the entire Windows Active Directory network and that ecosystem. So for some of that, a lot of what you're gonna have to do though is build your home lab. But what I just recommend for that is just get a computer where you can run a number of VMs, set up your own Microsoft domain, start playing with those various pieces. But a lot of it is choose your own adventure. Like which path do you want to go down? If you're focusing on web, try and hack me's and similar, fantastic, because you don't need that interaction. With the cloud, it's all out there. Just sign up for some of those free services. Maybe you pay for a little bit, and you can do anything and everything that other folks do. The network, the Windows domain, you have to find a little bit more focused testing environment to do that, or like I said, build that home network. I did all of my Kerberos research, man, that's like almost a decade ago at this point, but it's literally just on VMs I had on my system. I set up domain controller, a SQL server, one or two other servers, and a desktop system, and just started playing with some of that. And it was literally just the free version of all of those resources that are available. Build that, and then after 180 days, build it again, because you have good experience on how do I put this together so that I know how can I tear this whole thing apart. So the short answer is it depends a lot on what's out there, but there's so many phenomenal resources out there available, even if you don't want to go to the home lab route.
Yeah, I've found, to at least for me in my personal experience, like I like Try Hack Me, I like Hack the Box, I like Proving Grounds, I like all these like cool cyber ranges that are out there. One of my biggest, I guess Hack the Box isn't so much this, but the others definitely are, is you kind of know, oh, well, you know, because the lab is welcome to the cross-site scripting lab or welcome to the SQL injection. You know what's going to be there based off of what the lab is kind of about. So there's a lot of hand holding, which we need at a certain point in time. I wish there was more labs that were open range, that was just free and open, and it's up to you to be able to, because and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, being able to spot the weakness, the vulnerability is just as important as being able to exploit it. I can know how to exploit SQL injection all day long, but if I don't know how to find one, or if I don't have a good methodology for discovering it and knowing, oh, there it is, even in very odd places, that's kind of really what separates the hands-on skill from the over. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. That discovery is such a key piece of it, and that is, I mean, it's a very good point, because even I've worked on CTFs, net wars, things like that, and when we tell folks like go to this system next, there's still a discovery on how to get to that system, but you've also given the person the path on, by the way, this is where you should go next. And the harder piece is if you're building it for yourself and you want to test it, like you building it and you know the vulnerabilities, so you know the path. So it can be a little bit harder to find that and learn that discovery piece. Like if I don't know, how do I go about doing this? A friend of mine a number of years ago at the Dallas Hackers Association, he had this really crazy complex lab that he was working on. I haven't seen it go anywhere yet, but it would randomly generate cross-site scripting, these different websites, different domain types of attacks, so that he could literally build his own lab and then go through that entire discovery phase with that as well. You could, with some of these, you know, especially the labs where it's more of a domain, just turn off the hint system, don't look rather at the questions, and try to find your own path along the way. Because there is a lot of value in not finding things. Like, hey, at what point do I give up? At what point do I move on to the next thing? And I think that's one of the big differences between more junior people and more senior people, is that, all right, I've tried everything that I can do to identify this type of issue. Let's move on to the next sort of thing. But I completely agree with you. That is one of the limitations with the Try Hack Me's, Hack the Box, etc. Is they tell you when you go in, like, this is the SQL injection lab. Like, okay, cool. This whole other suite of tools I'm going to ignore. And we do miss that opportunity for self-discovery in some regards. That said, it is still really important to figure out hey, when I have one, what can I do with it next? And practice those tools to discover it so that when it occurs in the real world, ideally you can find some of that stuff. But I completely agree. That is one of the drastic differences between the quote unquote real world and the lab.
Well, I'm gonna have to talk to the folks over at our practice labs team and say, hey, we need an open world cyber range that people can just come in, log in, and find what you can find and have a good time doing it and really take those skills. I think that's a good idea. Somebody write that down. Sophia, put that on a notebook.
I'll pull up a notebook.
Yeah,
send a Teams message to somebody on that one, would you?
That's a great idea. Yeah.
And the hard part with that too, if I can add to that too, is it now takes significantly longer. So like I teach with SANS, I've got a pen testing class there. And we tell people, like, go to this system next. And even just saying focus on whatever path it is to get to this system saves a huge amount of time. And if you can remove that piece in whatever way, shape, or form, it gives you like this whole world and you have to collapse it down to figure out like what are the possible vectors to get to that next piece. But it takes a lot more time, like an order of magnitude or more potentially of additional time, especially if there's many different systems. And that's, again, a valuable thing as you sort of mature in your offensive cybersecurity career, developing those skills to identify, knowing when to move on to the next thing, knowing which pieces are likely to have the greater impact and which ones are less likely.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, I think we've just solved the problem here, right? As we got to add that little piece.
Done.
Yeah. That's all.
20 minutes, we're out.
That was it. Get the brain trust together and be like, I see an issue. Let's fix that right here.
You guys can
right
solve
now.
the world. We need to get you guys to watch.
Hugs, everybody.
Solve the world's problems.
Yeah, bring it in. Bring it in.
Bring it.
You're so close.
Sophie's leaving us hanging.
You were so close. Well, as much as I enjoyed that discussion, and I do think you guys could solve the world's problems, we do have some more questions that we've got coming in from YouTube and LinkedIn. So we'll go ahead and poll. We've got an interesting comment from LinkedIn. This comes to us from Steve. Steve says, I know the CompTIA partner annual meeting is going on this week, and one of the discussions relates to the acquisition of TestOut by CompTIA. With that and the rapid changes in this field, it looks like traditional textbooks and other learning resources are narrowing because who wants to create resources with a short, useful life? Thoughts?
That's a great question. Now, you probably got a little more knowledge on this one than I do, honestly, because I did CompTIA stuff. I guess I still do CompTIA stuff, but I haven't done traditional test out and book learning kind of courses in a long time. I just kind of look at an objective list and go, I could learn these things. And then you go take an exam and hey, certifications, they're fun. But yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Since you've been working with SANS for quite some time, SANS has always, for as long as I've known, kind of been that, hey, hands-on, come in, we're going to sit down, you're going to have an instructor right there, you're going to have a classroom of people, and they're going to kind of walk you through learning these techniques. Do you guys lean on textbooks very much?
Yeah, I mean, yes, SANS very much does, but it does take a ton more time, and especially with the SANS model, they want the notes to be, very thorough, very similar to a book. We've got a lot of people putting out the traditional books. It takes a lot more time to put those pieces together, whereas I can just sit down and I can, have a demo, talk through it. I can talk to a wall or a very loud rabbit, and just deliver this content. I don't think it's necessarily going away because people don't want it, because people learn in different modes. It just does take more time to develop all that content. You got proofreading time in there as well, and if you want the physical books, there's the whole printing aspect of it as well. Again, some people really love learning with books. That is not my personal thing. I'm not a quick reader. I'm a little dyslexic, so reading is very slow. That said, I do prefer it to video because sometimes I want to fast forward, skip around, things like that. So I think we're probably going to see less because it does take more time, but I don't think the need is going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I kind of tend to think of my textbooks or just books in general as references. I keep them on the shelf for a reference. If I need to quickly just grab and flip to, hey, how the heck do I do that weird JavaScript thing? I can never remember that. I'm outsourcing that part of my brain and keeping it in the book. And then I think it was like Socrates or Plato is actually he complained about books is like, you won't have to be as smart. You can just store it in a book. And I'm like, yeah, that seems smart to me there, guy. I'm going to do that because that's how I like to treat them. So And I think that's also coupled with the fact that a lot of exams are moving away from that A, B, C, and D, or put this in the right order, at least when it comes to hacky type of security certifications. It's more of, hey, here's access to try to do X, Y, and Z and make it happen. If you can, you pass, great. And I think with a push toward that, textbooks really don't kind of fit that mold. I mean, maybe I'm off base on this. What do you think?
I completely agree with you on the book piece, where I can quickly find that and scroll through and just visually see multiple pages at a time. Like, this is the piece that I need right now. Whereas, the video format, I got to scrub a lot more. If somebody's talking, I have to try to figure out, like, if does a picture come up. The other piece too, there's a lot of folks who work in small rooms where, some of the electronic stuff isn't allowed in, and the books are what they actually end up very much needing. Again, books are many times, I read fewer books, but I have the books as a reference, so that I'll kind of skim through the book. I'm not going to remember everything, and I can grab that book and I can pick it up, flip to that page, like, hey, I remember this discussion about this. Now let me find this piece by piece. So I think there's, at least for me, I find the books, the print material, to be tremendously useful.
Yeah. Again, same way. Love to have that stuff on my shelf as, oh, I need that. I've finally, pull it back out. But of course, yours is probably like mine. It's all marked up. It's dog-eared. It's everything is in a way, because I've kind of poured through it, pulling out those really important pieces. And I'm much more of a proponent of get your hands dirty, do the thing. Okay, read about the thing. Now go do that thing. I wish I could do a whole lot more hands-on, in person. I mean, I do like that part about SANS training where there's a person there and you can talk to them. And so people need to build, like, I like Discord and things of that nature, so that a community can come together and I go, hey, I'm trying to learn this and this doesn't make any sense. You can have 10 people kind of come in and go, here's a resource you can use to help you learn that X, Y, and Z. So now it takes that book from just being some theoretical thing that's conceptual, and you can put some legs on it and go play with it and see how it actually works, and then go, oh yeah, I can see in this example how that would work, but it didn't work here. And now I got to work my way around that. And that's where really good learning and experience comes from. All right. Well, let's, unless you got more on that.
Yeah, we had a little bit to that. So
yeah.
Another great resource, but outside of the traditional quote unquote learning, whether it's the books, the videos, the blog posts, things like that. But and you touched on it, but the Discord channels and the communities. I mean, I mentioned that with my Kerberos thing. It was literally me and some folks that I knew just discussing this thing and then just trying to figure out what this is. And we didn't have my goodness, this rabbit.
Oh, there was a movie about a bear that came out.
Rabbits are not.
I think the rabbit is.
This is the rabbit from the Monty Python skit.
Yeah.
Anybody got a holy hand grenade?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, but if you go into the Discord channels, Slack channels, whatever, the more specific you can make the question, the better answers that you're going to get. So if you, this is from my experience. I've seen people come in like, hey, how do I get started in this very broad subject? And it's so broad, and people, they really do want to help. They want to help you because they feel for you. Selfishly, they love sharing what they do. It makes them feel better. But the more specific you can make those questions, like, hey, I'm looking at this specific vulnerability system, whatever it is, I'm looking at technique, blah, 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 blah. What are some other similar things? What are some different ways that I can use this tool? This is this very specific issue I'm encountering with this tool, with this piece of software, this hardware, whatever it might be. And then you get much better help, much better feedback from whatever community you're having those kinds of discussions in. But the communities, it helps bring those things to life, because you'll read a book and you're like, but I don't understand this. When can I use this? You'll have the questions, and either whether it's the live training, whether it's people at work, whatever it might be, it really helps fill that in and to just bring that stuff to life.
Yes. Amen, brother. Amen. All right, let's move on to the next question here, because we could probably opine on this for the rest of the webinar.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the next question we got, Sophia?
I feel like we could do a webinar and just cut you guys loose and just let you talk, and we would get great information out of it. But that's not.
I believe they call that Wednesday offensive, right?
So So somebody's already doing that. So we do have questions. Like you said, we've got somebody here from LinkedIn. Samar wants to know, how do hackers exploit weaknesses in wireless networks like Wi-Fi? Which I think is a pretty broad question, right? Because there's a lot of answers to that, it seems like.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of Wi-Fi pen testing at all, Tim?
We used to do a lot more of it. A lot more when we had WEP, because WEP was so terribly insecure. That said, I saw WEP at a coffee shop this morning. I was trying to help my sister. We were talking before the show about playing IT support for family, but I was trying to help her connect to this coffee shop, and they had WEP, and I was like, wow, it's been a long time since I've seen those kind of things. But we honestly, we don't see as much as we used to with the vulnerabilities. And the ones that are there are realistically the same ones that we've had for probably decades. Just the simple weak password if you're authenticating, the evil twin style attack. But we've seen a lot of organizations get much better using certificates for authentication where you can't do that same sort of pineapple style attack. But if you want to dig into that, look at some of the pineapple style attacks. The evil twins are really interesting. The web stuff, realistically, these days, the cracking, the pre-shared key is really interesting. But realistically, I'm not seeing as much emphasis on that as we once had. And especially with a lot more people working from home. And even if you do get access to those networks, a lot more of the traffic is encrypted now. So if I can observe and I can track their encrypted communication, we still have TLS inside it, so it's then less useful even afterwards.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny how Wi-Fi hacking was like this hot soup du jour kind of thing that for a little bit, because that was how you could easily get some access into someone's network, and then once you were there, you could pivot around. Like you said, not everything was encrypted like it is nowadays. And so that was like a big deal. But now, yeah, you can, use something like AirCrack or Fern Wi-Fi Cracker or grab a pineapple or something to that effect and one of these little tools and go, hopefully you've got a weak password. And even if it's WPA2, if the password's bad, I can force a 4-way handshake and grab all the necessary bits of information and then get to town on cracking that. And then it's just, make sure I have a good dictionary or a brute force tool for making that happen. And then fingers crossed. There are people that do use bad passwords still. So it's still in a good attack vector. But like you said, even if you did that, if you're using a certificate-based system, okay, well, that's not enough anymore. We love these multi-factor things nowadays, and for good reason. So. Yes.
Yeah, we still do a couple of Wi-Fi ones. They used to be kind of fun, and these days I kind of like, another one of these. They're, I don't want to say easy, but the steps have been published. There hasn't been a lot of changes over the years, and it comes down to if they've got WPA2 just with a pre-shared key, which in the enterprise we don't see that very much anymore. A lot more move to certificate-based and TLS encryption and on the inside, things like that, and the security surrounding the authentication. So less. What's that?
You've seen a lot of like network access control with those at all?
Not as much. And part of that is just because we haven't gone on site as much anymore these days. Just because, since COVID, it's kind of nice. We don't have to travel as much. And frankly, even when we had to go on site, like we're doing a test for an organization, and 3 years ago, almost everybody was in the office, and now they've got 20% of their people who are now on site. Everyone else is remote. So even if with that 100%, let's say, set, we're now down looking at just 20% of users, and so we have fewer people that we have potentially that we can target for any sort of attack related to this. And a lot of organizations too, they're kind of, I don't want to say cheating, but their Wi-Fi is literally just gives them internet access, and then they have to VPN back in. Or we see a lot of organizations moving everything to the cloud, so they're not even accessing anything directly. They're using, again, TLS and many other modern protocols to authenticate and access those systems, where even if you can get inside the Wi-Fi tunnel, there's not much that you can see or that you can do.
Yeah. I do want to get a price quote from you guys about doing all my remote workers and their Wi-Fi. I'm sure that would cost me a little bit of money. But moving on.
A little bit of travel.
Yeah, a little bit of travel involved on that. All right, Sophia, what else you got for us?
We've got another question from LinkedIn. This one asks, what are the best tracks in certification to become a cybersecurity consultant?
Ooh. So not working with a shop, just kind of off on your own. Now, I'll kind of piggyback on this one as well. When it comes to consultants or just doing consultant work, how often do you use outside talent and not just your in-house standard 9-to-5ers that are working for you on payroll?
Yeah, we end up doing a lot more of our folks, and some of it, a lot of it honestly has to do with the contracts, where if we ended up having to give it to some contractor, there's a whole bunch of extra paperwork that ends up being involved. The certifications, honestly, there's plenty of good ones. Look, I'm the author of the Sec 5 class. Of course, I got to throw that out there. The OffSec stuff is good. But realistically, at least in my mind, as someone who's hiring, those things are nice to show that you've crossed the bare minimum threshold. And realistically, I kind of don't care which one it is, as long as there's a hands-on piece to it. Like I said, there's plenty of those that are out there. The less hands-on they are, at least for consulting, and in consulting here, I'm going to sort of dig into that in just a second. But like for offensive, like I am, there's just a sort of few there. Whereas if you want to consult in GRC or in many other areas, there is no like hands-on GRC. Like, come here, tell me, let's review the security program of an entire organization. So the short answer is, some of those letters, they absolutely help. We are seeing, or at least I've heard, I'm not at a big organization, where we're seeing a lot more focus on, are you attending things regularly? Do you have these certificates of completions? A lot more of the try hack me's, the hack the box, something to show that you're active. I think that's the most important piece, to say that like I am doing this and I'm interested in this beyond just hey, I do something. And it's realistically, I think the big thing is it demonstrates that you can actually do something instead of just talk about it. And it's hard. I kind of, to some degree, hate that, because it is a harder barrier, especially for folks, in different economic classes where it costs extra money to get into these pieces. But there are still plenty of pieces out there you can get for a lower price. And you can demonstrate that you actually did something to complete this certification or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the evolution of offensive and even defensive cybersecurity is moving that way as well, with things like BTL1 with the security blue team stuff. And I think TCM has also come out recently with some defensive certification and training track. Excuse me. But what I'm seeing is there's so many ways now for somebody who's into offensive or defensive security to prove their skills through building labs and being a part of cyber ranges and posting that stuff on these social forums, creating a GitHub where you've built tools, you've done write-ups, you've done all this stuff. There's so many ways in which that we're almost going the line of developers, right? Because developers, there are certifications, but there are not a ton of them. And most developers don't get them. They just go, here are things that I have done. Here's the access to them. Check it out. And I almost see us trending that same way, where I might not need a certification unless it's like a really specific, high-end, really well-respected certs. I can prove as much with a GitHub repo and a blog as I can with a certification.
Yeah, and honestly, this is, I'm a dinosaur at this point in the cybersecurity game, the offensive side. But I literally got my first job in cybersecurity. At the time, I don't think I had any certs. It was literally, I was doing blogs, and I eventually leveraged that into my very first purely offensive role. And here's the thing about the blogs that a lot of people, I think, miss, and myself included earlier in my career, is you don't have to come up with the latest and greatest 0 day and then leverage that. Some of the best posts and conference talks, videos, whatever, are literally describing techniques and tools that have been around for years and years, maybe even a decade. But getting out there and showing, like, this is how I used it. I used to use those blog posts as, I need to explain this to somebody else, and until I can explain it to somebody else, I don't understand it. And I'm blanking on his name, but Corlan Coder literally turned his blog posts on trying to, and it was his self-learning. It was written for him to learn how to do Windows exploitation. And he eventually turned that into an entire business and training around that. Again, literally built on, here, let me try to figure out how to do these things. Again, all publicly and already available, but he was trying to figure out how to learn it for himself. Other people found that exact same thing useful and just leverage some of that. You don't have to go out and the latest and greatest thing. You don't have to go out there and surprise all the elders of the internet. That's not what most people need. The vast majority of people need that more basic, more intermediary to help them get to the next level and then progress from there. So focus on this, I don't want to say simple, but honestly, focus on the simple stuff that everybody needs. If you want to create content, demonstrate your skills in whatever way, shape, or form that is. As a hiring manager, that's a piece that I really love.
We love hearing from hiring managers, that's for sure, because that's almost like the secret key to, okay, what is it you're looking for? And what's cool is that, you're talking about the elders of the internet. And yeah, you and I came from a time where if you did not prove thyself worthy of holding the keys to the king, then, you couldn't get in. But nowadays it's like, now you and I are in the position to start hiring people, and people that came up the same way we did. And we go, yeah, it was kind of garbage that they did that to us. So, as long as you got some good knowledge and you showing some competency and aptitude and a great personality, I want you on the team. We can train you to learn all the things you need, and you've proven that you're teachable because you went out and grabbed a cert, or you built a blog and you did all these cool stuff, and you're active in that community. It's like, excellent. That's exactly what I want to see. Welcome aboard. Let's get you working.
Yeah. And in our era, there weren't a lot of choices. There were very few choices. And in fact, there definitely was no college career path for any of this type of stuff. Like my most senior guy on my team was a music major. Another senior guy on my team was a journalist major. I think there's one person on my team that has a proper cybersecurity degree. So we kind of came up with that. I think hacking, at least, maybe I think we're moving away from that a little bit, matured maybe in a little bit the wrong direction, but it very much used to be a meritocracy. And what can you do? What can you demonstrate? What can you do today? And again, I think we sort of lost that through the maturing, unfortunately, maybe the wrong direction, where people focus a little bit too much on the certifications, the traditional classroom, because there is so much that can be done at home. And honestly, we had to do that ourselves back in the day.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully that helps answer the question out there, because it's definitely a multifaceted one. It's a difficult one to answer when it comes to what's the best certifications and what's the best, career path. Once I have certifications, it's a one size fits one solution for most people, with some generalities thrown on top that we all kind of go, well, this seems to work for a lot of people, so try that. So hopefully that answers your question. Speaking of questions, Sophia's got another one for us. Sophia.
I do. I'm just full of questions today.
She was staring at me, like burning holes in my head, like, hurry up, questions.
Yeah. Yes, that was me. So we have a question here from Nate. This one's interesting. It says, is it sustainable to work full-time in cybersecurity and have another full-time career? My instinct is that would be scary to do.
2 full-time jobs. Someone doesn't sleep.
Maybe he's a vampire.
Yeah, I mean, that's the young man's game, and I used to do that kind of stuff. That's how I did my transition. I was in IT and I was doing that at night.
Fun fact:
I
Tim's
very much 23. Caution. What's that?
I said, fun fact: Tim is 23.
Yeah, God, I wish. Double that, literally. Yeah, but it's hard, and the last thing I want to do is have people burn out, especially people working on my team. Like, they're no good to themselves. They're no good to their family. And then, I don't know what I call it, selfishly or capitalistically or whatever. They're no good to the rest of the team either. If it's something you're really passionate in and it's something you're digging into in the evening and you're getting energy from that, I don't see that's a problem, and that's probably more sustainable. But like the multiple times where I've dug into something and done a ton of research after the day job was over, like I needed to do that in bursts. I needed to be very careful that I didn't just keep doing that for years and years and years, or else I would just burn out from everything and just not be useful to both. But if it's 2 careers, 2 jobs, I mean, I get it. There's economics involved that I'm not aware of, but the sooner you can get back to a better work-life balance, I think that's the better. I know it's not a great answer, and it's probably the answer you somewhat expected.
Yeah, it was funny.
What do you guys think?
Mike Saunders was telling me, he's like, I take off like the entire month of December, and I don't do anything. I don't touch a computer. I go out and be with nature. I hang out with my family. I do all. I'm like, that's a smart idea, because any of us that have been at this for it doesn't take long to figure out, oh, I am really burning the candle at both ends and in the middle, because it can be consuming. We have that, like we mentioned this earlier, we have that thing in our brain that makes us laser focus in on things. And if you give me a bunch of things that do that, I will laser focus in on all of them and then go, oh, I'm getting 3 hours of sleep this week, and that's probably not good. And you're neglecting your family and you're neglecting yourself. I remember listening to a talk from a lady that used to run the NSA's hacking group. And she said, I had to get like shower kits for all my guys because they wouldn't leave and they wouldn't bathe. And you could smell them. I mean, like, here, because you can get too focused in on this stuff. If you don't step away from these things from time to time and make sure that you're very meticulously manicuring your time and effort into all the things you're interested in, you will get burned out and you won't want anything to do with it anymore. You'll be like,
well, and there's this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a certain point where the diminishing returns absolutely kick in. There's certain times where I've absolutely just tried to bulldog my way through a situation. And if I had taken a step back, taken a break, I would have completed the exact same task in less amount of time. The great conversation I just recently saw from like Jeff Bezos, whatever you think of him, whatever, but he had a great thing. He's like, look, I very much, one of the richest men in the world, very successful company, has worked very hard, but he's very careful with blocking his day because he's like, at least in his role, his job is to come up with good decisions. And if he's trying too hard to make too many decisions, he's not going to make as many good ones. And I forget the name of the principle off the top of my head, but if you give yourself 10 hours to do a task, you will absolutely, without question, use all of that 10 hours. If you try to do the exact same task maybe in 4, there's a decent chance maybe you can actually complete that. I mean, maybe different than framing a house, but taking that break is so important. And one of the things that I learned way too late in life is when I'm trying to solve a problem, sometimes the best way to solve the problem is to not solve the problem. Like literally take a break. I get stuck in a big problem, like, cool, taking a break, I'm going for a run. And I can't tell you how many times during that run or cool down afterwards when I'm grabbing some water and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is the best way to do it. It's way faster, way more efficient. And I saved myself a ton of time where if I had bulldogged, I'd probably still be working on it and come up with an inferior answer.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Multi-career at your own risk. That's what the moral of the story is here. It can be done. It's just usually not very sustainable, as you asked. So yeah. It maybe in a short burst, that would be something you want to do. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's kind of personality is different. So you got to weigh and measure that accordingly. If you've got the wherewithal and you got the time, maybe it is worth it for the short time, but in the long term, I think it's going to catch everybody. I think, Tim, you probably agree. That said,
100%.
Let's go to the next question that Sophia has for us. Sophia.
We've got a question from Peter, who's watching on Zoom. I thought this one was pretty interesting. He wants to know your thoughts on encryption layering in different programming languages. He said he tested this during his PhD research.
Encryption layering in programming languages.
Encryption layering in different programming languages. That was the question.
I know. I love Tim's face on this because it's like, this seems a little broad. We have a ton of information on that. Can
somebody explain it to me?
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big programmer, so I'm not quite. I'm gonna pick the question and answer the wrong question here, because I'm not quite sure what you mean by the encryption layering. Sort of 2 pieces. Never write your own crypto. Use the trusted libraries. Update them regularly. The other piece, I think what's going on here is maybe the question is around how many times should we do something, like how many layers of encryption is the right amount. And I've always heard that, the government folks, they always want at least 2 layers, something like that. There is definitely a diminishing returns. There's, how do you deal with the data? The ever so important issue of some of the key management, as we just recently saw with Microsoft leaking a very critical key, or actually, we're not sure what happened to that piece. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for this. Can someone explain it to me?
Yeah, I'm kind of, my mind.
Just like research afterwards, right?
Yeah, my mind kind of went the same. Where and probably because I'm deep down the rabbit hole on malware dev right now, and it's like, okay, well, I do need to encrypt these payloads and stuff so that the AV and EDR systems won't detect them. So maybe if I'm, Zor encrypting, and then I'm using some other type of encryption, and then maybe I use another type of encryption, and then I encode all that, and it'll bypass a bunch of stuff, and then I got to unobfuscate those things, and maybe that's that's where my head went. So whether or not you need to do more than that, so I do a lot of looking at actual malware threats, and in my estimation, they don't do much more than maybe one type of encryption and then an encoding, or the other way around.
Yep,
that seems standard obfuscation to bypass just about everything. Once you get down that road, most things are like, well, I don't know what this is, so I guess it's good. You're cool. So I know it doesn't do anything bad as of right now, and it'll kind of let you pass the guard gate, and then you go in there and you do all the deobfuscations, and things start to go up into memory, and you're like, yay, we're doing bad things.
He did add, he says he researched this mostly around firewalls. I don't know if that adds any clarity or not.
Okay, so encryption around firewalls. Still, it needs to have a little more.
Yeah.
Is he just talking about multiple encryption, like where you encrypt something once with one algorithm, and then you encrypt it again with another algorithm?
Maybe multiple layers. Yeah, I mean,
next gen firewalls.
So maybe
they do.
Maybe you've got your like TLS encryption, and you've got it inside a VPN. Like, does that add? I mean, it doesn't hurt, but I don't think it's necessarily a requirement unless you've got things that are literally protecting the lives across the world and nation state secrets.
The American Idol.
It also comes down to how long is this data going to be useful for? So if you're working like a stock trading company, the information is useful for 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
So how secure does it need to be compared to national secrets for around nuclear warheads that could destroy humanity for all eternity? Right? Drastically different scenario there. What's that?
That's what I use WEP for that.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're good.
Twice.
Yeah, twice. Never gonna crack.
The age old, got to throw it in the Rock 13 twice joke,
yeah.
right?
Then you go, hold on, what?
I feel old.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're bombed to hell. Okay, I got you. Cool. Yeah. My bad, y'all. My bad.
He said he did a lot of testing on how different viruses would react to the layering, and he says, yes, I crashed many systems doing this. So,
okay.
Just wanted to add. He's adding information as we're going.
And that's like a valid technique to where you're crashing firewalls, because a lot of times firewalls and IDSs, IPSs will fail open and just start allowing traffic to pass because they don't want to denial of service whatever's behind it. So that would definitely be a valid attack. As far as how much, Tim, do you got any experience on do you do a lot of stress testing?
No, around that, no. But what I've seen, like in the offensive space, is if I've got a payload and I'm trying to get by AV and EDR, like at some point, the defensive tools are like, I have no clue what you're doing, but you're definitely trying too hard. I tried many layers, like you're decrypting a couple of times. Like, why are you decrypting over and over and over again? I'm just going to call you bad and I have no clue what you're doing. Or you're encoded in a way that's similar to, like you said, some of the malware. Again, I have no idea what's going on here, but we're going down a path where things kind of look bad. One of the things that, like you mentioned, Mike Saunders on my team recently did some research into is encrypting, but then turning all the encrypted pieces into just pure English text. So he's got shellcode that is just dictionary words, so that if it's analyzed, it's like, oh, it's just sentences. And then taking that, converting it into the actual shellcode, executing it. So it is encrypted and obfuscated. And in something like that, the encryption actually doesn't have to be very good, because these things aren't super advanced. They don't have a ton of time. They can't shut these systems down forever because people still need to complete their job.
By the way, his techniques were brilliant. That man is a whiz kid for sure. Yeah, super awesome. We've had him on. We gotta have him on again. That's
yeah, jump back.
Hey, people back behind the cameras. Make that happen. Get Mikey back on the air, right? It'll be a lot of fun.
You got Jason coming too. Jason's awesome. He's fantastic. He's our social engineer extraordinaire. That dude has literally robbed my bank account as part of a gig. Literally robbed my bank account. It was phenomenal.
I can't wait to watch this man in action. All right. So Sophia, what else do we got? I know we got more questions.
So this next one also comes from Zoom. Daniel wants to know, Daniel wants to know, I'm a recruiter switching to cybersecurity. I got a cybersecurity degree and earned some certs. So what can I do to improve my chances without work experience?
Okay. Without work experience. I think we've kind of like touched on this in a lot of different ways already, but you got a silver bullet loaded up in the gun there, Tim. That's like, okay, you got a couple of certs, you don't have a ton of experience, but if you had this, kind of goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think the interesting piece here that fake Daniel, or the real Daniel, and you're the fake one.
Daniel 2.0, yeah.
Yeah. He's the upgrade,
Yeah.
right? But I think the interesting piece that Daniel has, he's got some insight. Actually, I would love to hear from him at some point. But he's probably got the insight on. He's got these data points for all these different people being hired, and can kind of build together like, hey, why were they hired? Get some of the feedback around that. But I think the real thing is, and this is for anybody getting into cybersecurity, we all started at some point without experience, right? And it's convincing somebody at some level that you have got the technical aptitude, you've got the drive, and you work well with the team, or at least some combination of those two. But it goes back to that, what can I demonstrate that I actually do? Because you can set two people down in an interview, and if they both say the exact same thing, but one's got either blog post, as you mentioned, code, and one can demonstrate what they can do, but again, certifications, whatever it might be, that I think definitely gives you that leg up. But it's the interest, the passion, and fundamentally it comes down to a lot of who you know, for better or for worse, and how you can work with that team.
I will throw this on the woodpile as well, is sell yourself. Be a salesperson of you, right? You are your best advocate. So get in there and be like, do everything. I mean, you kind of come from that as a recruiter. You're basically trying to get people with the right people so that they can work well together, because if you're doing a poor job of that, then no one's going to want to use you as a recruiter. So take those same skills and apply that to you. You are now recruiting for you. Make that happen, right? Tell everybody how great you are and how like no one's going to work harder. I love this stuff. Show that passion, show that personality that would be what they would want on their team, right? If you come in, arrogant, and maybe that's what they're looking for. Maybe they find that endearing in some way, shape, or form. Most people don't. So, but if you come in with showing just a good passion, explaining your aptitude for it, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that parlayed into that person is cool. And on paper, maybe they don't have quite the chutzpah as somebody else, but I really liked them. And I can work with that. They had enough that I liked the person as well. So you put those 1-2 punches together of displaying what you can do, plus displaying how awesome a person you actually are. And then, and like Tim says, it never hurts to know people. go to
and to add to that too, like during the technical interview, there's going to be pieces that like you don't have experience with. Like, don't try to BS, because they're going to see right through that, and that's an immediate like done. Say, you know what? I'm not sure. Here's how I would find out. Like, I can't tell you, like, I have a checkbox, and I know a lot of different interviewers try to get people to a point where they get to a question that they can't answer and see how the person fails. If they BS, automatically done. If they say, hey, I don't know, bonus points. I don't know, and here's how I'd find out, even more bonus points. And if you've got the time and energy and you're really interested in the position, follow up afterwards, said, hey, we talked about this. I did some research into this. Here's how actually I did some of the research and kind of do some of the follow-up there. The other piece, of course, is it's going to take a lot of applications, right? And sure, as a recruiter, you know that more than probably anybody else out there.
Yeah, it is a numbers game in a lot of ways. That's for sure. All right, Tim, we got time for one more question. I know it's going to be a good one, Sophia. I know, right? It goes by fast.
Well, it is. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
This one is a hot button topic. This comes to us from Travis. Travis wants to know, what are your thoughts on AI and its impacts on the future of cybersecurity?
It will impact cybersecurity.
No.
I'm glad I could help.
Done. We're over. One more time.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
So, Tim, when we all lose our jobs to AI, well, you got that number to Truckmasters? I'm going to need that.
I know, right?
We're working a bucket.
I think one of the big things that we're going to see AI help with is some of the defense, because the big thing that AI is good at is looking at large data sets and extracting from that. There's not as great at taking the data set and coming up with some completely novel, some completely new that it's never seen before. So I think from a defensive perspective, we're going to have some tremendous advances in some of the baseline detection, tremendous advances in identifying the attackers earlier. I don't see AI, and maybe this is me with some delusions of grandeur or something, I don't see it making a big change in offensive security in the pen test space. With exploit dev, maybe some creative things there, but I don't see, actually we have seen some of that already with some of the Shellfish folks. This is like almost 5, 6, 7 years ago at this point, done some of that. But our traditional like penetration testing, I don't see that changing as quickly as some of the defensive stuff. I see the defensive stuff getting much better, ideally much more quickly there.
Yeah, and that's would you say that's due to the fact that you got such large data sets when it comes to seam logs and syslogs and going, I don't know what to make of all this stuff. AI goes, oh, I do. I'm good at this.
Yeah. You're like, bro, I don't have to wake up for this. Yeah. Like, you just feed all the logs, and you're like, weird. Why is Steve in Phoenix and all of a sudden logged in from Moscow? And immediately handles it, immediately jumps on top of it, instead of having to build your own correlation detection, elevate, have somebody respond to that. I think that's the piece that's going to be, we're going to see a drastic increase to kick those ransomware actors out, ideally quicker and ruin their livelihoods.
And defenders are going to love that too, because how much of your day do you spend putting out fires that aren't really fires, that are just like, oh, well, yeah. And it's like, I wasted a bunch of time and effort working on this because I had an alert and it came up and I had to go, work it out and see if it was a false positive, and it was. And now it's back to my desk. I'm going to do it again. And you kind of get alert fatigue and burnout from that really fast. And you just start going, well, none of this is a bad thing. And then as soon as you let your guard down, that's when you really get hacked, and you're like, oh, and where AI can just go, here is a real problem. Please go look at this. And you go, thank you, AI. I appreciate your time and effort on that. I'm going to go handle a real problem now. So,
yeah, it's going to take some time, right? Because it takes some time to train those models. It's going to be bad before it's good, just like I was bad before I'm good, if I'm really any good at what I do now. But I think that we're going to see the tremendous advancements in that space, or at least I'm hoping for that.
Agree to agree, Tim. Agree to agree. And we're going to have to agree on calling this a day, because we are out of time I know, man, I could do this 3 hours until my voice gave out. I would sit here and wax eloquent with you, my good friend. Look forward to seeing you at Hackenfest. I want to give you a moment to take some time to let people know what you got coming up, what things that you're doing, ways they can just be abreast of what you're into and what they should be into. Go ahead and take this time for Tim time, as we're going to call it.
Sure. Welcome to Tim Time. I feel like we need some soft, subtle music in the background. Yeah, if you have questions, I'm always happy to chat with any of you folks at the conferences that are out there. Email tim@redsiege.com. We've got a regular Wednesday offensive where we just chat, not recorded, really simple. Some training out there, so keep an eye out for that. And on the tweeters, I am at Tim Medin, same thing on all the other socials. So reach out and hopefully we can meet up in real life at some point.
Yeah, man. I know we're going to be at Hackenfest together, so I can't wait to see you in the real world.
In person.
That's right. Live and in color, right? That said, I guess that's going to do it for us as well. Sophia, you want to take us away?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of conferences, there's another conference coming up next week, Black Hat USA 2023 in Las Vegas. I will be there alongside my fellow edutainer, Lauren Deal. So come by and see us. ACI Learning is going to have a booth number 1589. That's 1589. They're going to have a Mario Kart competition. It's Mario Kart Double Dash, which is the best installment in the franchise. Come by, you can play and win some prizes, and just talk to our team. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, you can use the code Daniel30 to get 30% off your IT Pro membership. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out. But otherwise, I want to thank Daniel and Tim, of course, for joining us today, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.